And we are live. So, welcome to episode 93 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got John K. Alvarez, the lone gunman. That's the story, at least, that it was a lone gunman. You know, John may have seen it from a perspective that no one else has yet, but he's not talking.
It's all connected.
It's all relative, man. It's all
relative, man.
So, we had to postpone yesterday's episode. I didn't make an announcement, but we'll be back with Let the Right One In next Wednesday instead of this. But we're here tonight to talk about the X-Files. And I don't know of... I don't know anywhere where they're actively, covering the X-Files or covering an episode of the X-Files or talking about a movie, but we're talking about it here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're ready to go, we can get it started.
I want to believe, man.
Boogie woogie. So let me just say that real quick, if you're catching this on a replay or if you're here in the live stream, leave a comment. One-word comment is fine, and it helps with our traffic. We're available pretty much anywhere you can catch a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to catch it in some way, shape, or form, please leave us a quick one word, and we'd be grateful. This movie, The X-Files, I want to believe, is currently, I believe, playing on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's also shifted over to Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire X-Files catalog, in terms of all 11 seasons, are playing there in their entirety on Hulu. So you can catch that at any time.
Mm-hmm.
X-Files, we just did... our top 5 favorite themes and soundtracks, and my number 1 theme was the X-Files because
Mm-hmm.
I said you never knew what you were going to get once you heard that introduction theme. Yep, were you going to get a mythology, a conspiracy episode? Were you going to get, aliens? Were you going to get, there was one with a human man worm
Mm-hmm.
from Chechnya. There was an episode with the Jersey Devil in the first season. They were filming in Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm.
There was a nice shot from the Atlantic City Expressway, so I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
Here... in 2008, this movie takes place about 8 years after the quote-unquote final season, which was season 9.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's always been kind of my opinion that X-Files movies are, because there's 2 of them.
Yeah.
And there maybe something is coming. There might be a third one coming up. But X-Files movies are basically 2-hour episodes where Mulder says shit. I don't want to make this movie into, The Exorcist or anything like that, but I think it's a movie that does slip under the radar.
I agree.
And it's worth watching.
I agree.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, one of the things about X-Files, and it still makes me a fan, because I can't say I never fell out of being a fan.
Yeah.
Was that they played on your paranoia, they played on your conspiracy or what you felt was conspiracy. Some of it was just out and out, even like just Monster of the Week type shows, but they always were funny and they were never dumb. Even the ones that were a little simpler or humorous or whatever, it was smart writing, smart stories.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And I carried it to the movies well.
Yeah, you never got the impression that they were phoning it in.
No.
And they had some episodes you're just like, really? But I mean, the
Yeah.
performances carried it over.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the episodes, I think, with a Postmodern Prometheus, where at the end they go to a Cher concert, they
Right.
take the Frankenstein
Mhm.
monster to a Cher, and you're like, but at the same, somehow they made it work,
Yeah.
and like you didn't even want to like it. You're like, this isn't what I want to watch. But by the end of the episode, you were so into it that you were, oh, okay.
That was one of the few episodes that I generally, when Mulder says, I want to see the writer. Because
Yeah.
it shouldn't end this way. I want to, and I went, me too. Because I was like, God damn it. I didn't want it to end that way either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had episodes, and you talked about this, the Home episode,
Mhm.
which is
Oh,
still
God.
considered one of the most frightening things that's ever been released on
Yep.
television, about inbred cannibals.
Mm.
It's just graphic, where they're burying that baby.
Yep.
And those kids are playing baseball the next day, and then
Yep.
they kind of they bury it so shallow. There's like a little baby arm
Yep.
sticking out of the ground. I mean,
Oh,
it's bold writing,
yep.
and just one of my
Mhm.
all-time favorite series. I own all
Exactly.
11 episodes on Blu-ray, both movies. Proud to do
Mhm.
it. I was glad that this movie was not another conspiracy episode, another mythology episode with the smoking man.
Right.
Here they did something, because that first movie was,
Mhm. Right.
and it wasn't that literally was like a 2-hour episode.
Right.
That literally was a 2-hour episode. This was something completely different, and
Yes.
I didn't know much about it. When I first heard about it, and I'm like, really? Because it's been like 7-8 years. Why are they
Mhm.
doing this? I figured the X-Files were over with. Okay, sure. My all-time favorite show. I'm going to go see it. And I was
Mhm.
really surprised at how
Mhm.
dark it was.
Yep.
How almost unlike an X-Files episode it was. It was just
Mhm.
unrelentingly bleak. There was
Right.
very little humor in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is pretty fucking
Mhm.
good.
I loved the fact on this episode because, I mean, I said the subtitle before we went in to start the show officially, I Want to Believe.
Yeah.
Because I always wondered if Chris Carter was asking everybody, what do you still believe?
Yeah.
Since it was like 7-8 years after the season was over, because there was a lot of questioning of faith in it too.
Yeah.
Not religion, but faith in,
Faith.
and I loved that. I didn't watch it when it came out. I have to admit, when it hit the movie theater, I was like, I'll get to it. Or,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
when
get
I
it.
saw it on cable, I regretted it. I said, I really should have went and saw this in the movie theater. I loved it.
Yeah,
I really did.
Faith has been a recurring topic in the X-Files, especially as it
Mhm.
applies to Scully, who
Right.
is a woman of faith.
Mhm.
She's a devout Catholic.
Yep.
She's been placed in a number of situations where she sees things in those sorts of episodes that focus on her faith that Mulder doesn't.
Right.
And she becomes the believer where Mulder becomes the skeptic.
Right.
And I just thought that was a fantastic way to sort of,
Mhm.
shake things up.
Mhm.
Because Mulder wasn't a person. He isn't a person of faith in
Right.
that respect necessarily, and it was one of the things that sort of fleshed out her character.
Right.
It,
And I
it
love,
gave it some depth.
yeah, because she could have been just the scientist.
Yeah,
And it was funny because that would always be conflicting normally when it comes to science and faith as well.
Yeah.
So there was always that inner turmoil.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this whole movie was about that. Everybody had a question of faith.
yeah.
In one form or another.
As we're going 8 years later.
Mhm.
Mulder and Scully have now become a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm glad they didn't focus on that very much. It just kind of was.
Right.
They were just, who else are we going to be with?
Mhm.
It was kind of like that. They're together.
Mhm.
Mulder is kind of living as a recluse. You get the impression
Mhm.
he's not leaving the house very much. There's a little bit of comedy there.
Mhm.
Where you see he's been tossing pencils up into the ceiling, because he's just got nothing to do with himself. But Scully on the other hand, has gone back to practicing medicine and is the primary physician for a child at a Catholic hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another issue there in terms of, her issue of faith in terms of this terminally ill boy and whether or not she should continue to treat him or let him go into hospice care, because
Right.
the approach that she wants to take in terms of his treatment is very painful.
Mm-hmm.
And the probability of success, according to many, is very low.
Mm-hmm.
These conflicts that she's having with hospital administration, the conflicts that she's having with the father,
Right.
who's sort of one of the administrators in the hospital. I think he kind of wants to like outrank her,
Right.
so to speak. You know what I mean? He's the priest. It's a Catholic hospital.
Right.
But she's saying no. She sees something that he doesn't.
Right. Exactly.
And Gillian Anderson. I love David Duchovny. Don't misunderstand me. But Gillian Anderson has just been one of the great breakout stars of the past 20 years.
Yeah. Easily 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, just X-Files aside.
Mm-hmm.
I loved her recently in The Crown, where she played Margaret Thatcher. I loved
did a
her.
Great job.
Oh, she was fantastic.
Yeah.
She was great in Hannibal as Bedelia de Moria. She plays Hannibal Lecter's psychiatrist. And she's just fantastic. Yep. She had a couple of other serial killer police dramas that were British. I think one is called The Descent or something, and it's just so dark.
Oh.
She's just an amazing actress. But in this, I mean, it sounds like, why are we talking about this in a horror episode? But she makes that come to life.
Right. Exactly. And it was important to bring that to life. If any of that was done lightweight or like we were talking about before, fully committed, it would have killed this movie.
Yeah.
It would have been just a slow burn to nowhere.
Yeah.
And I always felt as the original series went on, it went from a series about Mulder to a series about Scully. Because you kind of knew where Mulder was coming from.
Yeah.
You saw Scully become a believer and change.
Yeah, she evolved. Her character evolved. There was the issue of her pregnancy. The loss of almost all of her father dies, in that one episode with Brad Dourif.
Yep.
The loss of her sister, she loses everything.
Right.
Throughout the course of the series, it's just loss after loss after loss. And I think the thing that sustains her is her faith. And there's a question that occurs in this movie that says, what if we find, and this is the question that's posed to both of them, what if we find we make the wrong choice by stopping?
Right.
In terms of her treatment of the boy, and then the Mulder storyline, which is extraordinarily dark.
Right.
It's the story of a missing FBI agent, and he is asked to return to the FBI to look in on the case, as some sort of, I guess they sort of consider him to be a crackpot, because the person who's giving them leads is played by Billy Connolly, of all people. They got Billy Connolly in on an X-File. Yeah, same here. But he plays a pedophile priest who claims to be having visions, psychic visions, of the missing women.
Right.
And he plays this character, Father Joe. And, I've seen this movie 2, maybe 3 times. He's really good in this.
Yes, he is.
He's really, really good in this because he's so, in the way his movements are kind of off-putting, like when he
Right.
runs, he does that thing where like his hands sort of flop to the side.
Right.
You know, it's kind of, you know, you can tell something's off with him, but at the same time, like his humanity, I found him to, he had a lot of humanity. You just didn't see him as, you know, some icky, you know, child molester.
Right. One of the things that I admired, and again, I think it goes back to faith. He realized, for lack of a better term, his sin.
Yeah.
And then he was genuinely trying to find a faith again for redemption. I mean, there was the one scene he was with Scully, who Scully didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Yeah.
And she goes, "What were you doing in the bathroom?" He said, "I was praying for my forgiveness."
Yeah.
And she says, "Do you think God hears your prayers?" And he says, "Do you think he hears yours?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what a great question. There was no like bitterness or snarkiness about it.
Yeah.
He was genuinely saying,
he spoke
yes,
like a priest.
I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to save myself.
Yeah.
And I loved that. That was also a brave tack to do for the movie, because of what was going on with the priest in Boston and things like that. That was all happening then.
Yeah.
At the same time. And the way they portrayed him, I went, wow. I mean, that was gut, because he didn't admit like, oh, I made a mistake or I'm sick. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I know, and
I was wrong. He talked about the self-loathing.
Yep.
You know, and all these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he really, like, he didn't come across as a villain.
No.
He didn't come across as a villain. And it could have been very easy to, and maybe that's a testimony to the writing, a testimony to his performance.
Right.
But he's genuinely having these psychic visions that are tormenting him as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know, so, you know, you're wondering, okay, well, I mean, issues of faith have been going throughout this show for 10 years.
Right.
You know, is this part of his penance?
Yeah.
You know, that he's kind of tormented by these things that he can't understand. You know.
And if he wants to help, who's going to believe him?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody that's just
nobody
it. Like,
wants to believe him.
In the new FBI, they want nothing to do with him.
Right.
You know, Scully wants nothing to do with him. The
Right.
only person who only halfway considers him is Mulder and the FBI agent played by Amanda Peet, Agent Bannon. Now, she does she's pretty good at this. I don't follow Amanda Peet a great deal, but I enjoyed her in this.
Yeah, I actually do. Has done some serious and interesting acting choices. No joke intended. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it. But what happened to her in the movie, it was a shame, because when they revamped the series, I would have liked to seen her do a couple guest shots.
Yeah.
Like her and Mulder do something type deal. That would have been a good, interesting, portrayal.
Yeah, they had another character that they brought in the series, played by Annabeth Gish.
Yeah.
Monica Reyes, and she was great. And they paired her up a little while with Robert Patrick.
Exactly.
It would have been nice. Yeah, it would have been nice to see them all.
Yeah.
You know, to see her come back in this.
Or Gish and Pete together. See, Gish, Pete, and Scully, and having like the whole female crew type.
Yeah,
that would have been an interesting plug. To try to do it that way.
Now, one of the criticisms I have of the movie, if there is such a thing, is just it comes up several times, and that's why I mention it. The constant reference, even now, I mean, this show started, I think, in 1991?
91 or 92, yeah.
91. So this is 2008. So we're looking at almost 20 years. And the recurring argument that Mulder's still looking for his sister. Like, I was like, you really didn't have to keep bringing that up again. Let's get on with the episode. Like, I've seen this for like the third time, but I was, every time she does that to him, I expect him to just turn around and tell her to go fuck herself.
The third movie.
Yeah, I'm going to get like the director's cut of the movie or something like that, where Mulder tells, fuck you, Scully. All right. You know what? You've been throwing that in my face for 20 fucking years.
Yes. Yeah.
There's one episode where he kind of goes off on her. She does something and he goes, how many times? He just stops her. He goes, how many times have I been wrong?
Yeah.
He's like, exactly. He goes, every time we have to do this perfunctory dance, where you try to, tell me to look harder at the science, and, I always end up being right. He
Right.
just like that happened only one time though over the course of the
Mhm.
entire season. But I was waiting, I was like, she's
Yeah.
doing it again. They
Yeah.
are like a married couple.
Exactly.
She's just gonna push that button every now and again, and he's
Mhm.
gonna shrug his shoulders. Oh Jesus,
There we go.
they kind of are a couple,
Right.
you know.
Just like even taking any sexual tension, if there's any left, out of it, they're even like partners in in life with their job. They just know each other so damn well.
Yeah, I mean,
know?
the tension sort of went away after
Mhm.
towards the end, and I think at some
Yeah.
point towards the end in the last 2 or 3 seasons, they do actually become a couple.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, at this point they're like an old married couple, so
Oh,
there's
God.
there's no sexual tension there. There's
Yeah.
just aggravation, wisecracks,
Mhm.
poking each other, all the time, getting on each other's nerves.
Yeah.
He's got the door closed in his back room while he's just sitting there clipping newspapers. She
Like
just,
true,
is like
like
harping.
two partners would.
Yeah, she's like harping over his shoulder about something. He's like, will you leave me alone? This, that, and
Right.
the one of the things, my perspective on a lot of things has changed over the course of the years, but I still appreciated it. And I watched this a couple of
Mhm.
days ago in preparation for the show. Um, was the knock to George W. Bush,
Mhm.
where they're in the office
Mhm.
and they go back to the FBI and there's that picture of Bush hanging up and the X-Files theme starts playing.
Yeah.
Really quick as a mocking kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, that still kind of holds up. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, the real, I mean, it, we talk about all these things and we've been talking for about 20 minutes without really even getting into what was going on in the story and what was happening
Yeah.
with, I mean, you're talking about like a Dr. Frankenstein
Mhm.
kind of scenario, this,
Yeah.
and it's so dark and and
Mhm.
I don't want to. I don't even. I don't know that many people have seen this, so I don't necessarily
Mhm.
want to get into it all
Right.
that much.
Right.
But they uncover like one.
Yeah.
This movie, to me, in its own way, is as dark as Home was,
Right.
because I do consider this to be like a 2-hour episode.
So do I.
Yeah, it's like a 2-hour episode. You could have cut off, maybe where, Monica, where Agent Bannon, and then just go on with the rest,
Mhm.
and you're just like, oh God, this
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's
Mhm.
awful. It's like, I didn't understand what I was seeing as I was watching it the first
Yeah.
time. And then when they show you what
Mhm.
the reveal is, you're like, holy
Holy
shit.
And people keep forgetting that X-Files used to do that. They had those episodes like when I rewatched it again, I was doing a little bit of research because everybody's going, yeah, they have the monsters of the week every now and then.
Yeah.
But when they show it's a guy or a girl and they're just that dark, they forget, and they have some of those episodes in the series.
Yeah.
And I think they just did that to say, oh, by the way, remember this?
Yeah.
Because I think everybody's expecting the aliens or whatever. And
the smoking man again. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to show you. Remember, they used to do these too.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it got me the most, was like, I forgot that it wasn't just all sci-fi or looking for little green men.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
And it was creepy. At one point in time, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this.
Yeah. I mean, like, where did that come from?
Right.
Where the hell did that come from? And it's just, it's convincing. Because, and, this movie wasn't a movie that it had like a middling sort of reception.
Yeah.
People weren't really crazy about it. They loved Gillian Anderson's performance in it. But, when I viewed it, I viewed it through the lens of watching kind of a 2-hour episode.
Right.
And it's probably among the darker things I've seen in a while. I mean, there's very, like I said in the beginning, there's very little humor.
Mm-hmm.
X-Files are usually replete with humor. This was
Mm.
not a a humorous kind of movie.
Exactly.
It just kept getting darker and
Mm-hmm.
darker. Having to deal with the father,
Mm-hmm.
and then having to deal with Scully and the boy and this, painful medical treatment, and
Yep.
then the revelation of what's going on with the abducted people, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just punch after punch
Punch.
after punch, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh man.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it's over, you're just like, wow, what the hell did I
Wow.
just? Wow, that was a hell of an X-Files.
Mm-hmm. Like the way again, not giving away in case someone hasn't seen it yet, but the way they ended it, even.
Yeah.
But I'm like, can I go too? Can I?
Oh, when
Can
they
I
go
get
to the
when
post.
they get the boat and they just like drift
Yeah.
off, and I'm going,
Yeah.
can I go too? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Pretty much. Pretty much.
it was when it was over. I remember it was one of the few times I actually, like I said, I saw it on cable, and I'm like, I'm not going to bed now. I'm actually want to sit and think about this.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It surprised me.
Yeah.
It was like a good left hook that I didn't see coming.
You wouldn't have, like, I think the point of,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel when I heard that they were doing this that the X-Files had anything left.
Right.
It was like, well, what's left? Everything has kind of
Mhm.
been resolved, but they're like, and like you said, no, we got the monster of the week here for you.
Yeah.
And
And it was funny too because they went against, like, a lot of people started making jokes about the X-Files. Like you said, all of a sudden they would play the theme.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, oh, okay, I get it. Blah blah blah. They were like, oh, by the way, we weren't that funny. Remember that? I think it was a lovely reminder to people, because I've noticed people who are not extreme fans of the show, but like diehard fans of the show, people who watched it every week and really got into it. They love this movie.
Yeah.
I was shocked how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not a movie that people talk about. I would imagine that probably not a lot of people have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worthwhile. It's a
Uh-huh.
worthwhile fucking movie. Even towards the end, was when when Father Joe tells Scully not to give up.
Right.
It's just there's some intricacy there. Is in Scully's question, is God talking to her through this person that she just can't,
right?
She can't relate to, can't possibly see as a vessel for this communication.
Right.
She's like, how of all people, is it that this person is the one who's telling me this thing that I need to hear? Which, I mean, I thought it ended on an optimistic note with Scully.
I agree.
Yeah, I thought it ended on an optimistic note with Scully.
And I felt a little bit for Mulder too. I mean, he was still the same, but there was a, hey, let's get back into this sort of, vibe about him.
Yeah, because go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, and it just popped in my head now. The three main characters, Scully, Mulder, and Father Joe, in my opinion, were all damaged in some way.
Yeah.
And it was funny that they reached out to each other and, for lack of a better term, healed each other.
Yeah.
When, by the end, yes, it was brutal, but, they're like, okay, let's go on.
Yeah.
I feel. And that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end, by the time we got to the end of the 9th season, they had just lost so much and had so many things taken away from them, because they never stopped. There was this never end, this thing where, at some point they probably just could have pulled off on the side of the road, and they never did. And so they've lost everything. And this is the only thing that he knows how to do.
Right.
She can go back to practicing medicine, but, he doesn't know how to do anything else.
Right.
And I was, I was pleasantly surprised that they were able to pull this out of a hat. Kudos to Billy Connolly,
Yeah,
who's always just fun to watch. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, it's an underrated flick, and I think people
Hmm.
should catch it.
I agree.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and enjoy it. Go into it with a complete open mind. Don't sit there and go, oh, "Okay."
Yeah,
It's it's gonna surprise you.
yeah, and this is a movie that you don't. If you're not an you're like, I didn't watch the X
Yeah.
Files. You don't need to understand any of the background story.
Nope.
The exposition is caught up within the first 10 minutes.
Right.
After 7 or 8 years off, they could have easily taken 30 to 40 minutes catching you up. They
Right.
do it in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and you're caught up. And then from there,
You're
it's
gone.
close to about a 2-hour movie, and yeah,
Mhm.
you're good to go. So
I think that's why I didn't like the first movie as much as this one, because it was like in between the two seasons.
Yeah.
You kind of had to see it to
Yeah.
connect the two. But this one wasn't. You could pick up and go.
Yeah.
You know, type deal.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is a little shorter than what we usually do, but I think this is a good place to bring it to a close. I didn't want to get too much into the reveals with this
Yeah.
because it's a lesser known movie, and maybe people will take the opportunity to go catch it. But is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered everything that I was hoping to get covered in
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah.
I really was, because it's a good flick that nobody saw.
Yeah.
Or not as much people saw. And I'm like, if anything, if somebody sees this on a late Friday night, they might go, well, let me go see if I can find it.
You'll be very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think that brings it to a close for us this evening. We're keeping it kind of short because we don't want to get too much into the reveals. My thanks to John K. Alvarez, the lone gunman, joining us here for our solo show this week.
There we go.
This will be it for the week. We're doing one show this week, but we'll be back next Wednesday with our rescheduled episode from yesterday when we do Let the Right One In, which is just it moved into my number one vampire movie of all time. Without being a vampire movie like that I've ever seen before. So that's on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we're keeping it up with Cold and Scary as Fuck as we get into a non-horror horror movie. We're talking about The Grey with Liam Neeson. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to be screening that with Ryan. If you want to jump in, you can. I don't think it's streaming anywhere though. But if you want to jump in, you can, because he doesn't know anything about the movie. So that's going to be fun.
Great
thanks.
flick.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. And another one that just goes right under the radar.
Yep, exactly.
Right under the radar. All right. My thanks to John once again. We'll be back next week. And until then, don't waste your time with bullshit.
Peace.
Good night.